As we welcome the Democratic candidate, one of the Democratic candidates for governor in the state of New Hampshire, Jackie Cilley. Jackie, good morning. Welcome to WNTK. Good to have you on.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me on. I suspect your world is as white as mine at the moment.
Isn't it just wonderful to have a foot of snow? Have you ever seen a New Hampshire? Well, actually, we did have a New Hampshire winter like that because our news partners at Channel 9 put up a graphic, and I didn't realize that we've had a number of Februaries where we've had less than an inch of snow.
Well, that's what I've heard, but it's depressed my husband, who happens to like to snowmobile.
Well, he's got a great weekend for that. Absolutely. But Jackie, let me ask you a question. You're following arguably one of the most popular governors in the United States, and that's John Lynch. Look at his approval ratings, not only among Democrats but Republicans as well. How do you top that?
Well, it's you don't top that. He's extremely popular. So he's done a very good job of shepherding the state. If you look at the latest figures on, there was a surplus last year for all the brouhaha about how we were going to be, I don't know, 100 or up to $300 million in the hole. We ended 2011 with a surplus. So he's done a very good job managing the state.
Also, in moving forward, and I don't know if you heard the little preamble that we had before we went over to the Hampshire Museum of Science, and it just kind of confounds me that when we announce anything with the word Democrat on our air, we get a bombardment of email with all this vitriol about Democrats, and I just can't figure it out. When you made your announcement at the YWCA in Manchester back on almost a month ago on February 7th, you said that you wanted to be builder-uppers and not terror-downers. Explain that as it applies to the future of the state of New Hampshire.
Well, I think you make a good point about the vitriol. I think that citizens are looking for nonpartisan solutions. They're looking for, folks that want to serve in the best interests of this state. As you probably know, if you looked at my announcement speech, I'm from Berlin, New Hampshire. I mean, I was born and brought up there, working class community, working class family, and the way I look at policy and the decisions that need to be made in the state are, what's in the best interest of the people of our state.
In many instances, there are several New Hampshires. There's certainly the North Country and the challenges that Coos County has. You have the very populous southern and southeastern part of New Hampshire, and us here in the Dartmouth Lake Sunapee region, which seems to have, and all three regions seem to have somewhat differing views. How do you unite all of these New Hampshires into one?
Well, I think the bridge is, those sort of working class issues that I grew up facing, that that my family has faced, and Main Street business needs. I mean, my husband and I run a business. I've got two sons that run businesses. The economy underpins a great deal of what goes on. Education is the bridge, between what working family needs and what, businesses need. The number one reason businesses come to the state of New Hampshire, for educated, trained workforce. Those are commonalities across the spectrum, regardless of what, area of the state you're in. I mean, if you're in Coos County, you're looking for jobs. And they've got, one of the highest unemployment rates up there. So, those are the common threads that pull this state together. And we have, in the decades, prior to the current situation that we have in the legislature, we have found ways to work together to benefit each and every area of the state. I mean, the kinds of things that, that are happening in this legislature are just, they're mind-boggling. I mean, the continuous attacks on education, for example, public education. We've got an amendment now that, that may allow this legislature, a future legislature, to walk away from its responsibility for educating our students. We've got bills in there that will give tax credits to businesses if they, encourage people to take their kids out of public school. New Hampshire has always had a proud tradition of standing behind education.
Jackie Cilley, Democratic candidate for governor, our guest on WNTK WUVR, and our phone lines are open at 888-299-3151, 888-299-3151. If you would like to ask Jackie a question, it is likely that the makeup of the legislature, Jackie, will stay Republican through the election this year. How do you then work with that Republican legislature to get your agenda moving forward and to address some of these issues that you just articulated?
I've worked in a very bipartisan way. As you probably know, I served a term in the House. I served 2 terms in the Senate. and throughout all of that, worked in very bipartisan ways with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Whether it was on for health care coverage, bariatric surgery. I mean, you look at a number of things that that I worked with others on, and had very, very good relationship, with folks. And it's a matter of having respect for somebody's opinion, believing that you don't have, a lock on truth and the only way to get someplace. It would be nice if our goals were, more in line with one another. I worry about the extreme pull in this particular legislature. But, as I said, I've worked very successfully with folks of all stripes.
Let's talk about money, Jackie, because you can't do anything without money. And while you addressed the surplus that we do have, the budget remains an issue in New Hampshire. We'll start working on a new one next year for the next legislative session. How do you bring more money into the state of New Hampshire? Is it with expanded gambling?
Well, first of all, part of the problem that we're facing are the 10 cent a pack decrease in the cigarette tax that lost somewhere in the vicinity of $14 million, to our budget. As the governor has said, he'd like to use the surplus to put towards what he sees as the deficit that we will likely have going into the end of this, the first year of this biennium. So we need to take a look at all of those things. Expanded gambling is something that in your area, folks don't want, and they don't want it on the seacoast. They want it in Salem. So I have said I'm open to looking at something like that. I share concerns with the current governor. It needs to have a lot of local input. It needs to have extremely good oversight, and there needs to be a Chinese wall between that industry and the ability to buy legislative influence. So there are things that need to be taken into consideration with any review of a proposal.
Jackie Cilley, Democratic candidate for governor, 828 on WNTK WUVR. Bill would like to join in the conversation. Bill's in Lebanon this morning. Bill, good morning. You're on with Jackie Cilley on WNTK. Go ahead.
Good morning. Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Hi, Bill. Good. How are you?
I'm pretty fair. My problem is with what you had said before, that you're willing to work with the other side, you're willing to work with the Republicans. However, when you have a Republican supermajority who's bound and determined to be intrusive in the citizen's life, and there's a side comment about the intrusive part, and that is that the libertarians want the government to get out of a person's life, but in the same time, they introduce all of this legislation, some you have mentioned, that's so intrusive, and they're bound and determined to get it done, and they don't care what you think. They're going to vote the way they want to. Now, how do you deal with people like that? There's a good question.
Well, first you start with a tone of civility, and you start with the willingness to at least hear the other side's proposals, and to try to get to a common goal. As I said a few moments ago, part of the problem here is that the goals may not be the same, and then you have to have a discussion beyond that. And part of it is one of the reasons why the one thing that the governor in New Hampshire has is a veto pen, and you've seen this governor exercise it in this particular set of circumstances. I don't believe that that the people of New Hampshire support the kind of ideology that's going on currently in our legislature. I think this is a legislature that's an outlier. I don't think we'll continue to see that after the elections in the fall. I've talked with an awful lot of my friends on the other side of the aisle. They're appalled by some of this, the social, the attacks on whether it's women, education, our gay and lesbian citizens. These folks went in saying they wanted to improve the economy and they wanted to create jobs. It seems like most of the bills haven't had anything to do with that. So this would be a tough and this current governor has had a very difficult time working with these folks.
Bill, good question, and thank you for joining the conversation from Lebanon. 888-299-3151. Jackie Cilley, Democratic candidate for governor, joining us this morning on the WNTK Morning Show. As a small business person, Jackie, and we hear from a lot of small businesses here in the Dartmouth Lake Sunapee region who say, gee, I wish the state would just get off my back with all that paperwork and all of those fees. How do you feel about that when someone says that?
Well, we have choices. The state runs on fees. That's how we've chosen historically to do business. So many of our agencies and departments are funded by fees. Our banking industry, our insurance industry. When you drill down, I talk with small businesses all the time. As I said, I have 2 out of our 5 sons because my husband and I have 5 boys. 2 of them, one of them is a serial entrepreneur. He starts a business every other year and very successfully. He's done well for himself. And the youngest one just bought the business he was working for. When you drill down and you talk to them about the paperwork, some of it does seem, overburdensome. Oftentimes, people are complaining in the abstract. When you get down to the specifics, they're really not there. You ask somebody, what is it that you'd like to get rid of? And, what kind of regulations would you like to get rid of? And when they start realizing that those regulations, for example, have actually been brought by businesses themselves, I mean, they're the ones that lobbied for certain types of regulations that protect their business, protect their industry, their property, you find that, that it's more abstract than it is real. To the extent that it's real, I had a talk with somebody who had some real issues with the industry that he was in, which had to do with environmental processing, and some of that sounds very concrete, and it sounds as though it's something that we can look at and fix. You take this by individual case. You just don't wipe out. Which seems to be the trend these days, wipe out whole sections of regulation that you suddenly realize can come back to haunt you later on.
Jackie Cilley, Democratic candidate for governor, our guest on WNTK WUVR. We start the month of March, Women's History Month. There has been an attack on women, especially over the contraception issue, and particularly vitriolic attack yesterday on one young woman by Rush Limbaugh, who plays on this radio station at 12 noon. And even the most ardent Rush Limbaugh fans were very vocal in their email to WNTK protesting what Rush said. Your stand on eliminating insurance coverage for contraception and the way women are being viewed now in this country.
This is a sad statement, and yesterday was the beginning of Women's History Month. One of the things, the theme of this year is women's education, women's empowerment, which speaks volumes to me because it was education that pulled me out of poverty. It pulled thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of women in the state of New Hampshire out of poverty, I'm sure. So the kinds of attacks, what he did was uncalled for and totally unacceptable. That young woman, first of all, was barred from testifying before Darrell Isaac's committee, and when she finally did testify, he went after her in a way that was just utterly, utterly inappropriate. And I think what you're going to see in the coming weeks is that there's going to be a tremendous backlash against that kind of thing, and you're seeing it all across the country. You'll see it, here in New Hampshire.
And we should mention that coming up...
Women are getting together next Wednesday.
I was just going to say March 7th, the Day of Action to Protect Women's Health, and that's going to be from 8 in the morning till 1:30 at the State House.
And I think what you see in that, again, is this extreme tendency of this particular legislature, and we see it also in D.C., but I'm most focused and concerned about what happens in, our beautiful Granite State. As I said, I'm, born and, brought up here. We've never seen anything like this. In 1999, it was a bipartisan effort that passed health care coverage for contraception. You notice that they're not going after a lot of other things here. They're not going after Viagra, Cialis. They're going after women's health care choices. And they have brought it down, some factions of this extremist tendency have brought it down to a behavioral level, as opposed to, this is reproductive health care, and women are half of our economic workforce. this has given women choices of when to start a family, if they want to start a family, and has freed them to be a full member of our economy. So it's distressing to think these were issues settled decades ago.
Jackie Cilley, Democratic candidate for governor, you've been very generous with your time. Just one more question. As you do house parties, as you go around the Granite State and meet people and look them right in the eye, what are they saying to you? What do they say, Jackie, please do this for me? What is that?
They say they want somebody to listen. It's not so much specific things. Although certainly we're hearing that the kinds of issues that we've just talked about are important. They want a strong education in New Hampshire. They want their personal choices and their freedoms protected and left alone. But more than anything else, it's that they have somebody that will actually listen to what they have to say and respond accordingly.
Online at JackieCilley.com. We'll put the link up on our WNTK Facebook page. Jackie Cilley is one of the Democratic candidates for governor. Jackie, we thank you for the generosity of your time. Look forward to continuing the discussion through this campaign year. Thank you for being on WNTK.
Thanks for having me on.